Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of The Overlay, a poker podcast brought to you by CCG Poker in beautiful Chicago, Illinois, or the surrounding areas of northern Illinois. Also, central Illinois. You can check out some events at Central Illinois Charitable Games. Hey, Brando, what's up?
What up? Just anywhere in Illinois. We provide poker anywhere.
Yeah, if you want to play poker and you don't know who we are, then you've been living underneath a rock.
Hopefully you live in Texas, or not Texas. Hopefully you live in California.
Yeah.
Because then maybe you might not know who we are.
Correct. But. And even then, I'm sure we're still popular, vastly popular in California. Over and under, Brando. It's our new over and under bet. Maybe I'll get over and under, just sponsor the podcast for the winter before we go in. The sports bar we go to in Chicago. That would be kind of cool. I'm going to pitch him on that.
That would be kind of cool.
So possibly in the future, brought to you by Over and Under. Today's Over and Under question, Brando. How many downloads? I guess it's not truly an over and under unless I give you a line.
I was about to say, you can't ask me how many.
But I'll give you a line. Okay, here we go. Over and under. How many downloads has the overlay received in its lifetime? That would be the last. We started in March of 2020 and is now October of 23. So we're coming up on our 4-year anniversary. Is that physically fucking possible?
I guess.
Oh, boy. We have an anniversary. Over and under. The line is currently set at 30,000. Over or under?
30,000?
30,000.
30,000. I mean, that seems like a lot. I'd go under probably.
The answer will be brought to you next week at the overlay. No, I'm just kidding, guys. It's not going to be next week. 30,933 downloads as of today. We started it in COVID, March of 2020 with the first episode, which is about COVID, the life and times of COVID, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, what a great time looking back.
Yeah, not
simpler times.
Not really. It was different. Yeah, the state of live poker during COVID-19, which was just zippity-doo-dah. But it was fun. It was a good time. Anyways, that's our over and under bet for the day. Brando missed. You're 0 for 1, Brando.
I'm 0-1. 0-1. All right.
0-1 for the over and under.
Man, and life's too short to bet the under.
Yeah, always bet the over. Just jam the over. Okay, hey, it is almost middle of October 2023. We are now living the life of the WSOP is here in Chicago, well, the Chicago market, right outside in Hammond, Indiana, beautiful Hammond, Indiana.
Beautiful.
2 complaints by me. 1, turnout seems to be a little bit smaller than it was in February. I think maybe they're coming a little too often to Chicago land area. Thoughts? I mean, I know everybody loves it, but like, I noticed a lot of the tournaments are down numbers wise.
I think that what's going to end up happening is that Elgins are going to go up, maybe, and then
we'll have.
I feel like the concentration of Chicagoland poker has moved slightly north.
Oh, that's
comparative to. I feel like when Horseshoe had 30 games running, and that was a spot to be.
That was
the tournaments were jamming. Now it's kind of like Rivers, Elgin. It's a little more north. You lose all
the
south. I mean, when there's only 4 or 5,
the state of poker 2023 from Brando. That's insightful, Brando. So you think the Elgin WSOPs are going to be busier than the Indiana?
I think they might start taking over because I think right now you would say like Hammond is the big one in Chicagoland area.
I would
say Elgin's kind of a new one.
Correct. I've never been to Elgin. I mean, I've been to the Elgin Casino before, but I've never been to. I didn't go to the. They've done 2 WSOPs there already. 2 circuit events.
Yeah, I think they've done 2 because I played in 1 and I say 2. I think
I might have to go and check that out. But
it's kind of nice. I mean, it's actually extremely nice how you walk in from the parking garage and you walk up to the booth to get a player card, register, and then you walk right into a ballroom and you're in there.
I do like that. It's more reminiscent.
For somebody who, poker. For sure, absolutely. For somebody who, is handicapped or doesn't like walking or is intimidated by parking a mile away, going up 7 floors to get to the venue, walking through the venue. I mean, Elgin is very much you park, you walk in, you sit.
Yeah, that is huge for me because one of the biggest things I dislike about the WSOP is just like I constantly feel like
car.
Well, and here it is. And this will kind of lead us into today's episode. And I think this is important. It's the kind of the importance of the early levels of a poker tournament, which I think very little people ever look at the structure early on and never really think about what you're losing by registering late or getting to the tournament late. So many poker players are like, I'm cool. I'm going to get there late. I am kind of the opposite. Poker's like one of the things where like, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I always feel like I want to get there early, find out where I'm going, especially if it's a place I've never been before. So I know where to go. I know where my table is. I kind of get the lay of the land. Then I go and find a bathroom, so I know where the nearest bathroom is. Maybe I'll find out a little concessions.
It's like the airport.
100%. I think if poker players treated poker tournaments like they treat an airline flight, life would be significantly better. I like to you should be there early, an hour early. Find your spot. Check in your luggage. Make sure you know where your gate is. Make sure you get a Coke for a little bit later or a snacky-do. You know? Don't do what Brandon does and rip in 5 hours late, 3 minutes before the registration period ends. Get in there, and then how do you feel when you get into a tournament that late in registration? And what's your mental state at that point?
Kind of honestly, it's kind of, I know I hate to just,
be honest.
Pounding the airline, but it's kind of like being the last person on a flight.
You're fucking
and you're flustered, and there's nowhere to put your luggage.
You're sweaty.
Everything's all tight already. And
everybody's
8 people seated there are like, oh, we're sitting for 8. No, screw the 9th guy. Well, you're the 9th guy.
Only the shitty seats are available. Yeah.
And then you sit down, you get comfortable, and boom, you're firing.
Try to wiggle in, and then
you're in the air.
Yep. This is your captain speaking. Strap your shit in because we're gonna launch this puppy. Yeah.
Right. Exactly, and all of a sudden you got turbulence. 4 minutes after sitting down, there's people that are already asleep because they got there an hour early. And they're sleeping when the turbulence comes.
They're so relaxed, they're sleeping. I'm gripping the edge of my armchair rest that I have wrestled for the last 3 minutes to receive because that's what I had to do when I sat down in my middle seat. And my white-knuckled fingers are grasping this thing so tightly that I think I'm going to bust a shoelace here. And he's just like sleeping like no cares in the world. I want to punch him.
So, I would say...
Go ahead.
The cool thing back in the day was, I'm going to be fashionably late.
Cool guy. Yeah.
I'm going to roll in an hour after it starts.
Yep.
I don't need the early levels.
No. Who gives a shit about green chips? What are green chips?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, the age-old saying is like, you can't ever win a tournament in the first few levels. You can only lose it. It's like, I get that statement, but you can really set yourself up nicely by kind of playing some early levels. And I think we've experienced it in the tournaments we've played together.
Yep.
You came early. I came 2 hours late. And we kind of had
totally different experiences.
Because
and what we're talking about is the WSOP. We both played the 10K PLO. We manned up, cowboyed up, astronaut up. That's what I call it now because I don't want to say cowboy up to my daughters. So I say astronaut up because an astronaut is androgynous. It could be a male or a female. It doesn't matter. So I'm always like, astronaut up. And they're like, what do you mean, Dad? I was like, well, when astronauts got to go out into space and do work, they got to astronaut up because if they fuck up, their brains get sucked out of their head and they die. And they're all like, whoa, that's really harsh, Dad. And I was like, well, that's it. Astronaut up. Let's go. Otherwise, your brains are going to get sucked out through your head. But you got to astronaut up. You got to get out there. You got to get to those early levels because when we played the WSOP 10K PLO, which might have been out of our realm a little bit. I think if you go back and listen to the podcast episode, I was all like, I totally didn't feel out of my element. The more I think about it, I think I was a little bit out of my element, but that's fine. I went and got there early. I found out where I was going so early that the WSOP pushed back the start time by an hour, which kind of sucked. It added a different kind of stress. But I was there for literally the first hand of the tournament. And truth be told, at my table, I think on an 8-handed table, we had 7 players who were there for the first hand, including Alex Foxen and Will Jaffe, who are apparently super famous that I didn't know. I mean, even Alex Foxen, $32 million of winnings in poker, lifetime winnings. That bro was there for hand number 1 of the 10K PLO. He's not pulling a Phil Ivey and strolling that shit in at the start of day 2. He's there from hand number 1. Blinds are 100. There's got to be a reason for that. I'm kind of switched. I went from thinking late is the way to go because you just kind of get in there and you get for the juicy levels. But be that as it may, if you get in late, you're kind of forced to start. You got to hit the ground running, right?
Yep. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you really.
I guess you don't you have to.
No, you get in there, and
especially
you're
in PLO.
like, even the monster stack. I played the WSP monster stack on Tuesday.
Yeah. Congratulations, Joe Chen.
Yeah, Joe Chen with a winner.
Another ring winner from CCG. What up? We should have a tournament of champions that only ring winners can play in at CCG for like during the CSOP, and get like a ring and bracelet event. Only if you've won a ring and a bracelet. I bet we get some random people to show up for that.
So I won a bracelet in 2009.
And 5-card draw. like Kevin from The Office.
No, but I sat down, and it was after the first break, 4 levels had finished, and it was level 5. I think it was like 200, 500, or 300, 600, or 300, 500. One of those levels. It was 500 or 600 big one. Sure. And even with a 40K monster stack, and I'm air quoting if you could hear my inflection in my voice.
I totally heard it, yeah.
80 bigs is fine. However, you got people that are chatting it up, people that have doubled up, people that have been eliminated and rebought. There's guys with 110K at your table.
You got
guys that are all in. Yeah, I mean,
short stacks are ripping it all in because there's enough in the pot now. Because when you're at 300, 600, and a guy opens to 18,
9,000,
you got 2 callers, 9, which is like because it's still kind of early, so people are still playing a little bit loose. Well, now the guy who's got 15,000 who took a beat earlier, he's just like rip it all in 15. So now it comes to you, and you've got ace jack suited. You're like, damn, I really want to play this hand. But I can't. What am I going to do now? I got to fold this pseudo premium hand. I was trying to think of a hand that I could come up with that was like a good hand, but like not like a automatic.
Yeah, ace jack suited, ace queen off. It's like,
it's like I want to play this, but I can't. And I think that's what I like to think about. We do love the analogies here on the overlay. We should do an over and under if people could count and let me know how many times I reference something as something else rather than just explaining it. But I kind of feel like playing a poker tournament is like running a marathon, right? Because a poker tournament is definitely the closest thing you could think of is a marathon, right? It's long, a ton. Your body's beat by the time you're done. It's a little less physical.
There's different,
stages,
obstacles and stages. Yeah,
right.
There you go.
I feel like you would be running a marathon by registering late. It's just like you get out of bed and they're like, marathon started, go. And you're just like, wait, what? Hold on, I just woke up. Like nothing happened. I feel like when you play level 1, 2, 3, 4, the smaller levels, you can kind of get your juices flowing. It's like poker stretching for your brain and for your game. You can just kind of ease into the tournament. You don't have to worry about it. It's the equivalent of, here's another analogy. It's the equivalent of like walking into a pool, like a beach kind of thing. You're like walking into the beach versus like running to the end of the pier and then jumping in. It's like the completely different, effects on your body if you kind of wade into the water versus just directly jump in. And I like the idea of getting that stretching done, getting those ace jacks, because if the blinds were 100 and everybody's pretty evenly stacked because nobody's gone crazy yet, and then a guy does, make it 300, you get 2 callers, a guy makes it 900. Now you look down at ace jack and you go, for 900, I can justify a call here. Like, let's see a flop. And then you flop Broadway and you win a big pot and everybody's happy. That doesn't happen in level 6 or 7 because you're kind of forced to remember, well, there's so much action behind me and there's another short stack over there. And he's like, you know what I mean? Like it's just a completely different game. I like the idea of easing into the waters of poker.
Yep. I mean, I'll say the 10K PLO, the first hand I played, I was all in.
Yeah, that's terrible.
I mean, I flopped the nuts and got it in.
Right.
And the guy had a wrap and we ended up chopping. But,
And exactly what happened there, right? The blinds were like 3-6 with a $600 ante. Somebody makes it 18 or 2K to open. You get 3 callers. Now there's, $7K in the pot. You flop the nutter butters.
Flop a straight. A guy leads for 5K.
And you just pop.
You just make it 15, 17K. Yeah, you started with 60. Yep. But like, here we go. I just made it 17,000 on the flop after putting in money pre-flop. And now he's pretty much like all in or fold.
And what do we start with in the PLO?
It was like 50 or 60.
think I want to say it was 50, but either way, it's the same difference. Right. Let's say
right.
I
So
think 50
either way,
right.
if I'm putting 17.5 in on the flop,
right,
it's all in on the turn for sure. I mean, there's no other, that's it. That's where out of bed.
Did you guys get it all in pre-flop or?
No, we got it all
not
on
pre-flop, on the flop.
Yeah, on the flop. Yep.
So he kind of re-raised you, and then you went all in.
He bet, and then I raised, and he's like, "Screw it, I pot."
Let's get it all in.
It was like 44,000. It's basically all in.
You do the standard PLO player when their heads up and they're just like pot, 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 pot. Like everybody just yells pot at the same time. You're like, okay, yeah, we're all in. Like we're all interested at this point to just get it all in and see what happens. And again, that's fine. You got it in good. You're not upset about that. It is what it is. I don't know what the odds are at that point. And it does suck that you survived, but you chopped, which is kind of like the nut low. I'd rather either be in or out. But you had to choose one hand. And it was a good hand. And the odds were with you. And that's great. But if you'd have played some of the earlier levers, it gives you kind of one of two roads to travel. Either you play those small pots and the kind of small ball poker that starts and only really happens in the first 3 or 4 levels, right? And you can accumulate some chips, which will give you ammunition for later in the tournament for that kind of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, blind levels, rounds 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That you can splash around a little bit more. You can open your range. You can play a little bit different cards that you normally wouldn't have played if you had a reserve. Or you play some early rounds. You miss out on some pots, and you're kind of below starting stack. Well, now you got to know. I got to tighten my range. I got to pick some spots, and I got to make it happen, and then go from there. It gives you an opportunity to kind of figure out where you need to be. And you had other pots that you played in that you won or lost. At least you had a chance to win them, right?
Right. And I will say the monster stack on Tuesday. First hand I played, it was me shoving all in again. It went like just how you described it earlier. It went like an open, a couple of callers, and a short stack of like 12 or 14K. Ripped it all in. I didn't know what happened to it because I just got there. It was like my fourth hand. I had queens, and then it got to me, and then I re-ISO'd, and now there's still 3 people behind me that could call for my tournament life. Now they all folded, and they all in had ace queen, and I beat him, and he's out. And now I have a starting stack and a half.
But however, you had to survive that. All in. You had to survive that all in, right? Which is kind of scary when you play in a tournament. And I don't care if it's for a $20 early bird or a $10,000 main event seat. I don't want to go there and just
sit down and be all in.
Yeah, I don't. I want to be able to play a little bit. Now, it's not that I expect it, and it is what it is, but I prefer to play. I like to play a little looser, get some more hands in, and play a wider range of cards early in the tournament. And I feel like my whole demeanor changes when I late reg and I can't.
It's a whole different mindset too.
Yeah, it's completely different. I can't, especially with PLO. I don't think I'll ever play a PLO tournament again where I miss the early levels. And I missed the early levels for the Sunday this past weekend. WSOP circuit event, which is one of my favorite events. The last 2 out of 3 years, I went second place, 11th place, missed the cut. I just never got anything going this past Sunday, which is fine. I don't expect to final table every single time I play in a tournament, but I don't know. I feel like I'm really good. But the one difference this year, and it's what made me think about this, is the fact that I didn't get there early enough. I think last year, remember, you came late, and I got there fairly early. I got there at like 5:30. I think I was there for like level 2.
Yeah, you already had spun like down to 12, up to 68 by the time I registered.
At like about 5 or 6 levels in. Yeah. Like I think you came like I did this time, like right at the first break. And
that's been my go-to time is like getting there on the first break.
I feel like that's negative. I feel like especially PLO, and I play more PLO tournaments than I do No Limit. And I don't play a ton of PLO tournaments, so my tournament play is not great. I'm not a grinder here on the tournament circuit, but I feel like you should play the early ones. I feel like the players that we know that are the best No Limit players, at least statistically, have won the most stuff, and I'm thinking of a few people. Typically, they're there early. Now, they'll rebuy or re-enter a tournament.
Well, that's another good thing about getting there early is if you bust kind of early.
Get in again.
You get in before. Now your second bullet is the time I normally would register, as opposed to me making it to dinner break rather easily because I skipped the first 5 levels. And now I have to decide whether I'm going to rebuy at the max late reg, which max late regging, I think, is pretty terrible for anybody that isn't way bankrolled up.
Right.
Like these people that have,
you're
$1 million bankroll for a $400 tournament, you're just saving time. It's more like the time versus like you value your time, and they're willing to gamble, get it in, play one hand.
They're willing to flip
out
for one hand to see if they can double up.
Because they're going to play the next tournament.
They would rather they would rather not play day one, late reg on day two, flip on the first level like that they play in. They just got to pick one hand, flip for all of it, and they either double their starting stack, which means they're perfectly happy now play poker, or they're out of the tournament. They didn't waste any time, and it gives them the ability to play more tournaments.
Yep, go find something. I don't go to the win now.
I don't know if that's a good strategy, but like if you'd asked me if I would have had the opportunity to buy into the 10K PLO at the start of day two, my answer would be, absolutely not. Why would I do that? Like I'm literally straight up flipping $10,000 to try to double up and then play from there, which I'm not even good enough to know I can actually make something happen if I double up once to 100K in checks.
However, these guys have a $10 million bankroll and they were playing something else to not play the PLO day one.
So I guess
just jump into it and bracelet hunt super late. There's a time and bankroll factor that I think 99 of our audience, including me and you, it doesn't apply to.
No.
So like, sure, there's definitely people that can advocate to max late reg, but that's just not us.
It applies to us in the early bird. I would do that in the early bird
for sure.
I would just buy into the early bird.
Because we're way bankrolled up for the early bird. Yeah, you're going to not waste your time at 2. Right. You're going to get there at 310. Buy in with the add-on for 40.
Flip one time.
Try. Yep.
And if I bust, I'll go play cash game. Wait for the deep stack.
For sure. Now, one thing to be said, and this has always been my defense on playing the early levels, is the worst players are never going to have more chips than they do at the start of the tournament, right?
Run that by me again. The
worst players are never going to have more chips than at the start of the tournament.
Correct. Typically,
so like the bottom 10% of the whole field, they ain't ever getting above starting stack unless they get lucky.
Right.
Obviously some
Which is even better because then they have a huge mark on their back because everybody's trying to get their chips because they're just dying to give them away, and they got twice as many.
Correct. Which is even a better situation to be there early.
Say the quote again.
The worst players in the tournament are never going to have more chips than at the very beginning.
Yeah, I think that's a great line to think about when you should be playing early levels because you're right. You're never going to have the bad players are never going to have that much money at any given time than in the beginning of the tournament, and you got to get there early to actually get those chips. Because if you had,
when are you going to face the worst players in the tournament 200 big blinds deep? Only in levels 1 and 2.
1 and 2. Fuck, that's such a good. You just the whole
sold
podcast.
You?
Yeah, the whole podcast could just end now because that right there it's absolutely perfect. That's 100% why you should do it. I'm trying to make it think like, well, your brain needs time to like. This is like poker stretching, and it's like you get to work in it. No, you're right. The bad players have chips, and
here's the problem. You sit down in a 10K PLO tournament with Alex Foxen 3 hours late. He sat there, stacked the fish in the beginning. Now he's got 120 to your 60. And now not only do you not get to play against the fish, now the pro has scooped up the fish's money, and he has twice as big an edge on you now.
Well, and the thing is, then he can push around, right? He can push on me. He can push on me because he's got the chip stack that I am unable to do so because it's later in the tournament and the blinds are too big and I've got to pick that one hand or full well knowing like I don't have a lot of bullets to fire here. I better pick a good spot versus, when it's 100-100, you can splash around a little bit, have a little bit more fun.
I agree.
The bad players are never going to have as many chips as they do in the beginning of the tournament.
But now, my last example is to play devil's advocate. Tony Tattoos Anthony, CCG player, he sat down at my Monster Stack table an hour before dinner break, 40K starting stack. I was sitting on like 250K. I had been playing now for a couple hours. I was feeling good. I managed to kind of late reg a little bit and spin up my stack. He sits down, 40K. Blinds are like, I don't know, 500, 1,000, 612, somewhere in there. And in the last hour of registration, he spins up 40 to like 350.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I've been here all day and I thought I was crushing with 250. He sits down with 40 and he's got 350 in an hour.
Right.
Sometimes it works that way. Other times he's making 3 tips to the cage and he lost 1,200, you know?
Yeah.
It works out great when it works out. And you feel like a genius.
Oh, it's my
when
other
you spin up a stack.
It's my other favorite poker quote. All in works every hand except the last hand.
Yep, you're either going to win the tournament or you're out.
Yep, it works every time except the last time. And then it didn't work. So, I mean, I get it. Like, you're right. When you hear those stories, it's like, man, why did I waste so much time playing hour-long PLO levels at 100 to run my 50K up to, I think we did start with 60, my 60K up to like 180, and then I chunked it all away, but that was my own fault. But, like, you know, hey, shit. Phil Ivey showed up, ripped it all in the first hand, doubled up, gets another big hand later, rips that all in. He went from 60 to 360 and 280 and no problem. It's like, man. And I busted my hump for an entire day and a half and I got 65,000.
Right.
I've been grinding these bots left and right. But I mean, I guess
I think in general, a blanket rule is the early levels are going to be profitable for good players.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no argument on that. Nobody in the planet could tell you. Nobody could make a logical argument against that.
You want to argue your time value.
Fine.
You want to argue, other tournament schedule.
Fine.
You want to argue all of that, bankroll this, whatever that.
I have more fun
play
on the
way
double
better
up.
with
Right.
I play better with 20 bigs. I don't know what I'm doing with you can make any excuse you want, but nobody's ever going to say that the good people, the best players in the tournament, aren't profitable right off the get-go.
Correct. Because the worst players are never going to have more chips than when they do now, which is awesome.
I'm glad you've repeated my quote 5 times.
I think it's great. It's a great quote. Super good. There's nothing wrong with it.
Okay, sweet.
All right, good. I like it. So play the early levels. Get in there. The bad players are never going to have more chips than they do in the beginning levels. You can clip that out and quote it for us. CCG, everybody loves it. The Overlay Podcast. Brando, we should do a meetup game at some point. Maybe in November, we could do something.
I'll be there.
All right, sweet. Thank you for listening, everybody. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit us a like, share us with your friends. If you're playing poker at the WSOP this weekend, good luck. If you're going to play sometime soon, because like MSPT's coming to town and other spots, check it out. Let me know. We'd love to see you. Follow us on Twitter at The Overlay Pod. Other than that, Brando, lead us out of here.
Farewell.
See you, everybody.